Welcome to the 293rd episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. Thank you and welcome. I'm going to talk a little bit about the presentation I'm going to do tomorrow at the Punta Gorda, Florida Vegefest. And I'm going to go through with what I'm going to talk about there, and I hope that you enjoy it. And if you can get to the Punta Gorda Vegefest tomorrow, which is February the 28th, that would be great. You may hear this later, so it may be a done deal, or you may end up hearing something similar. I never do a canned talk. I always speak without notes. I have topics that I go over, so it's never exactly the same. So even if you end up hearing this in person, it'll be a little bit different than it was, so I hope you do enjoy it. A couple of things on a note that March 25th, you can go on over to our website, drdulaney.com, DoctorDulaney.com, and purchase your ticket for a Zoom nutrition conference March 25th, where I'll be doing sourdough bread from the beginning to the end. So you'll see every step and a description of it and the benefits. And we're going to talk about fermentation and the gut microbe and Addie Dulaney Meinert. We'll also be doing a couple of meals that involve fermented products, so tempeh and sauerkraut. And we're going to talk about the gut microbiome. So if you'd like to hear that, go on over and click on and get your ticket. Just like last time, it'll be available for a week afterwards. We'll have a Q&A session that evening. It's a Thursday evening from 5 to 8:30 or so. But then you can ask questions that whole next week and view the recording. So I hope you enjoy it. The last one was such a success and we had such good feedback. We want to do it again. So that's the plan. From a running standpoint, next week is it's hard to believe it's finally here, the Treasure Coast Marathon. And I'll be running alongside of one of my members, and it'll be his first marathon ever after losing well over 70 pounds and getting off of insulin. And he has a history of coronary artery disease. So we'll probably get him on the podcast afterwards to just celebrate. But really excited about that. And then, of course, in April, be heading out to Utah for the Zion 50K. So ramping up the mileage. A little warm here today in Florida. I'm sorry for all you up there north, but it was actually a very enjoyable run this morning. I like running in the heat, and so it was a really nice sunny run down here. So we're having beautiful, if you like, this is probably the best time or the best season out of the whole year to live in Florida. We have virtually no or little humidity. It gets cool at night and gets warm during the day. And so we'll enjoy this for another month maybe, and then it's going to start kicking up and start getting humid again until probably December next year. But right now, the weather's absolutely beautiful, and I'm looking forward to taking Sophie, my German Shepherd, to the Vegefest tomorrow, and I'm going to be there with my staff, and we have a tent, and we'll have our cookbook, and we're actually going to do a giveaway. And I'll talk about that a little bit in this talk that I am. So we're going to do 3 meal giveaways that we've actually purchased the produce, and they're going to put them in one of our shopping bags it's reusable, and so people can actually take it home with the recipe and make dinner after the Vegefest. So I hope that goes well. I'll let you know next week, of course. So what I'm going to talk about is being healthy vegan. It's a Vegefest, which the Vegefests that are in this area are somewhat geared towards more healthy plant-based eating as well as being vegan Vegefests. So there's a little bit of both, and there's actually some SOS, salt, oil, sugar-free designations to some of the vendors can get to have display their healthy fare. But, there's a lot of kind of carnival vegan food. And so I really wanted to talk about being a healthy vegan and what that actually means. Because in my opinion, to be a healthy vegan means a healthy planet, means it's good for the animals as well. If you're not healthy, you can't take care of anybody else, and your stewardship is limited by your ability to do things. But I think we also need to set a really good example of what being healthy is. And there's a lot of stigma out there about vegans, that they're, unhealthy, poor energy, nutrient deficient and unhappy, and anti-vaxxer, the whole nine yards. So I want to downplay that. And the Vegefest tomorrow has a variety of different people that are also healthy and fit, and are going to try to portray this message as well. So when I talk about what it is to be healthy, the first thing I think about is, you can't be healthy and not be have a normal body mass index. And yes, I know some people are going to say, yes, but I'm full of muscle and my body mass index is increased because I'm very, very muscular. And there is that portion of people that are big muscular guys and carry a lot of bone and muscle mass, and they have a big BMI. But more often than not, some of these big fellas also have a fair amount of abdominal fat, intra-abdominal fat as well. Even down to women, as we age, a body mass index around that normal level of 24.8 can also be associated with increased abdominal fat, less muscle, less bone, and not be necessarily healthy. And of course, you can take it down into a younger aspect and be very skinny and have a BMI around 18 and have low muscle mass and low bone mass and be a setup for osteoporosis, because we know that, what muscle and bone mass you get at about, in your early 20s, that's pretty much going to be your peak. We know with strength training, you can actually put muscle on at any age, but it's much more difficult. And as soon as you stop, it goes away very, very quickly. So the best way to maintain muscle mass and bone mass is to really get it to get it at a really good, healthy level in your 20s when you stop growing. And that way it's easier to maintain something good as opposed to always be chasing it. So we don't want people to be too skinny, and we don't want to be too fat, and we don't want to be too over muscular, and again, carrying fat with us as well. So the BMI is certainly important. The next is fitness level. You can be skinny or overweight and not be fit. You can be skinny or overweight and fit. So we want people to be physically fit and have a good endurance capacity as well as a good strength and mobility. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And obviously nutrition, because I believe that plant-based, a whole food plant-based way of eating for humans is the best species-appropriate diet that we can consume. And I think that has been shown over numerous retrospective studies, as well as looking at the blue zones, as looking at people that have been doing this for a very long time. And I'm very comfortable in saying that, yes, plant-based nutrition, whole foods, low in salt, oil, and sugar, best way to go for sure. So we'll talk about that as we go along. So what happens when we age? Well, our telomeres are the end caps. If you think about the plastic caps on the end of your shoestrings, that's kind of what the telomeres look like on our DNA. They start to shorten as we age, and ultimately they unravel, and that's when DNA damage starts to occur. We generate free radicals when we do anything that causes oxidation. Just eating, activities of daily living generate free radicals, but the more poor we eat, the less we take care of ourselves, the less sleep we get, the less our nutrition is. Our antioxidants can't keep up with the generation of free radicals, and then that causes ultimate metabolic damage. We lose bone and muscle over time, which causes us to age. The other thing that happens is we're stressing our endocrine system. When your body is trying to do all these feedback loops with estrogen and thyroid hormone and cortisol, and you're just really burning your endocrine glands at full tilt, they tend to fail, and they tend to fail early. So we see people going through menopause at an early age. We see thyroid dysfunction, of course, diabetes, and all of that leads to accelerated aging. And again, nutrition plays a huge role with the accumulation of metabolic waste. So when we eat things that come packaged with a lot of chemicals and heavy metals, then those things have to be stored somewhere. We don't eliminate them completely. and often they get stored in our fat, so we have all these toxins build up over time and results in aging. So again, by the way we live our lives, we can decrease aging, and aging is associated with risk factors for all of these diseases, and they're all the same. So I want to try to send the message at this Vegefest that we need to lead by example, not preach, not get up on our soapbox, but actually lead by example by being the most healthy individuals that we possibly can. And it depends a lot on where we're starting. You know, if you're new to being plant-based or new to being vegan, it can be very daunting. And if you're new to cooking, it, adds complications to things. So you have to start where you are, of course. I tell my patients that the sicker they are, the more aggressive they have to be early on. If you're a young person, then the clock's on your side as far as learning this. But if you're really, really sick and we want to stop the boat from going over Niagara Falls and we want to back it up, then we have to be very, very aggressive in our dietary changes. So we need, but more than anything, we need to lead by example. We're not going to be able to impose our viewpoints on other people. But if people see us doing well, then chances are they're going to want to join in. This is Heart Month. February is Heart Month. We're coming to a close. It's never not Heart Month for me as a cardiologist. But, who's at risk for heart disease? We know everybody's at risk. From, babies are born with some degree of cardiac risk depending on how their mothers were. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. But it goes from, toddler to teenager to pregnant mom to grandma, to the elderly, from coaches. I saw this week in Facebook a very sad post where someone lost a beloved football coach. He was morbidly obese. He looked to be in his 40s. It was a shock to them, but not to me when I looked at his picture. It was certainly preventable, but not a shock. So we've lost a couple doctors in this town this year to stroke and heart attack because, again, they're eating very poorly, they're working late hours, they're not doing any exercise, and they prematurely aged and ultimately had cardiovascular disease. So we're all at risk for this. There's no one that is not. And I think as a young person, we tend to think that we're immune. And even as an older person, you may know someone that's had heart disease and bypass and stents, and yeah, they'll be okay. But the reality of it is, and I'm going to say it here now, and I'm going to say it again and again, there are 650,000 deaths a year from cardiovascular disease. That's the number one killer in this country, and it doesn't just affect 90-year-olds, it's across the board. And, we need to be aggressive to change it, and I believe being plant-based and vegan is an excellent way to reverse cardiovascular disease, and with that we'll reverse other lifestyle diseases. But we need to realize that it can happen to anyone at any age. So the risk factors for cardiovascular disease are similar to the risk factors for lifestyle diseases, autoimmune diseases, as are the risk factors for a bad outcome to infectious diseases like COVID-19. So having a high BMI, hypertension, high cholesterol, being sedentary, smoking, and being a diabetic are some of the biggest risk factors for cardiovascular disease, lifestyle disease, and a poor outcome to infectious disease, because ultimately all these conditions also have in common a high inflammatory level. So by treating one, we actually treat all of them. Again, as an endurance athlete and a cardiologist, activity is very important to me. There was a recent study done and published in the European Heart Journal where they looked at people with heart attacks, and they looked at their energy levels or their energy expenditure over their physical activity levels. And they divided them according to how many METs they did per week. And when you look at a metabolic equivalent, making the bed is something like 3 METs. So it's how much oxygen you actually consume doing a particular activity per your weight. So, in other words, if somebody is running for 4 hours a week, that would be a very high functional activity or physical activity level. If they were predominantly sedentary, then that would be a very low. And there was a very good correlation between being physically fit or being better than sedentary, being moderate to vigorous activity, high metabolic equivalent, and again, not extremely high, about 4 hours a week of vigorous activity was associated with a decrease in mortality from a heart attack, both initially in the first 48 hours and over a 28-day period. So again, some of the risk factors for cardiovascular disease being sedentary. If you're not sedentary and you're physically fit, you can decrease. Doesn't mean you can reverse cardiovascular disease with one good thing alone, but it does mean that you can help yourself if you're trying to get these other factors in line and something does happen. And I think that's a really important point, that just being physically fit, but having an abnormal BMI and being a diabetic and having high cholesterol is not going to save you. Taking medications and lowering your cholesterol, but being very sedentary and having high blood pressure that's not controlled is not going to save you. Taking your blood pressure medications, but having high cholesterol and being sedentary is not going to save you. It may decrease your risk, it may improve your outcome, but it's not going to reverse disease. We have to attack these different risk factors on each level. So you can actually lower your risk of dying from a heart attack somewhere between 30 and 45%, being vigorously active and being physically fit. So good. So, that's one thing that everybody has the opportunity to be able to do. So no matter, find what you like. It doesn't have to be running. My mom at 88, she says she gets her vigorous activity by pushing a broom around my house or a dust mop around my house, because I have these big German shepherds that shed all the time. She's always coming over to my house and pushing the broom, and she uses that as her physical activity. And, she's always chasing after the dogs and on the porch and cleaning up, and she's moving, and she watches her steps as well, and she maintains her activities. So she also golfs, she does yoga, so it depends on what you do. I know someone that's a contractor that does, builds houses and is physically laboring all day long, carrying lumber, using a hammer, back and forth. Those people are expending lots of energy. So it doesn't have to be a sport necessarily, but it needs to be something that you like, something that you enjoy, or something that's part of your occupation that can actually keep you physically fit. We know that leg strength is tied to brain strength, partly because of just gravity feeding blood and muscle strength, especially glutes and leg, being able to pump blood more effectively, arterial blood flow, venous blood flow, but also improved mitochondria. So the more muscle you have, the more mitochondria you have, the better energy production you have. Your brain needs energy. So even seniors that were started on strength training programs have actually been shown to improve their mentation. Obviously, if you're a senior and your leg and your glute strength is strong, you're less likely to fall. So that's also protected. But we know that leg strength is very, very important, and particularly important for falls. Your oxygen consumption, when we look at elite athletes like Lance Armstrong or high-level athletes, their ability to take up oxygen and use it for metabolism to generate energy, those athletes with very, very high VO2 max tend to be superior. There is a training effect, there is a weight effect, but the majority of people, their VO2 max it declines with age, and so how you're able to maintain that or where it was is important. And actually your VO2 max at age 50 is tied to longevity. So if you're out of shape at age 50, then you need to really do something about it, because you're behind the 8 ball to try to get into shape, to use exercise and fitness level in the longevity game. Mobility. Again, risk of fall. If you fall and break your hip, the next thing can happen is to get pneumonia and die from that, or certainly injuries that can be sustained from falls. So mobility of main joints and our main ball and socket, hips and shoulders is very important. So longevity is also tied to the ability to get off the floor without using your hands. There's actually a score. If you have to use one hand or two hands or hit your knee or, grab onto something. Same thing for a squat with a broom over top of, like a dowel rod or a broom handle over your head. The depth of squat and the ability to actually rotate your shoulders as well as your hips is also associated with improved functional capacity and longevity. We talked about cardio and metabolic equivalents. So the more endurance training that you do, there's no level at which, you're too fit and it starts to tail off. So the more exercise you do has always been correlated with improved longevity and performance. I hear people, talk a lot, and it's kind of funny. Here lately, I've been walking my dogs, and then I go for a run. Gretchen's getting a little older. Sophie's too young to run yet, so they do a vigorous walk to get their energy out, and then I go for a run, and I go by, a fairly similar route. And you get to know when people go to the gym. And, I see people that, it seems like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, they go to the gym. And a lot of people do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, they go to the gym. Or they walk Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Or they walk during the week, but they don't walk on the weekends. So I see who's out and who's not out. And but the reality of it is that you need to keep this up and to keep doing things. But 1 hour a day and then go home and watching TV for 7 hours and sleeping for 7 hours doesn't cut it. And actually 1 hour of vigorous activity followed by the majority of the rest of the day sitting is associated with increase in mortality. So we need to get up and move. And we need to move to a significant degree. So just walking very slowly, intermittently, may not be enough to do it, but it's certainly better than nothing. But setting your watch to get up and do a few squats at your desk or take a walk at lunchtime, making your own food, standing, cleaning your own dishes, taking your own garbage out, walking to the grocery store from a farther distance in the parking lot. These are all things that can actually benefit your time not sitting and improve your overall outcome. So I came across an interesting article this week in the Journal of the American Medical Association looking at maternal cardiovascular risk and child cardiovascular risk. And it was a lot worrisome, actually, because when we think of young pregnant women, we think of basically healthy people. The idea is that we're all on this planet to reproduce, and our life expectancy, has improved, and everybody takes for granted that they're going to live to through their reproductive years pretty healthy. But that's not necessarily the case. This study looked at 2,302 pairs of mom and child from a variety of different countries and looked at mom's cardiovascular risk factor and child's cardiovascular risk factor at age 10 to 14. And what they found was how good of shape mom was in, or how many risk factors mom had, was really tied to how many risk factors the child had. The really scary finding was that ideal cardiovascular health with regards to risk factors such as weight, smoking, hypertension, diabetes, activity in mom, ideal meaning that perfect score, only 32.8% of that 2,300 couples. 42.2% of children. So that if mom has poor cardiovascular risk factors, then there is a good chance that a 10 to 14-year-old child is going to have these abnormal risk factors. That is very, very scary because the clock keeps moving back and that children keep developing heart disease and plaques and hypertension and diabetes at younger and younger ages. So it's very, very important to emphasize mom's health during pregnancy in order to protect the child's health. So what should babies drink? There was a consensus statement written by some pretty prominent dietitians, one from the University of Pittsburgh, one from the University of New Mexico, Albuquerque, associated with they referenced Robert Woods Johnson consensus statement and basically said that they didn't recommend plant milk for toddlers and children being weaned off of breast milk. And they cited the reason that there could be a vitamin D deficiency, calcium deficiency, zinc deficiency, and decreased protein absorption from plant milks because of things like lectins and phytates in, say, soy milk or in grains. Most of that came, the very biased American Dietetics Association, and even the FDA and the RDA standards are very much influenced by the dairy industry, and so there's a tremendous amount of bias. Taurine is you may have heard of it. Cats need taurine. They can't. They need that. They can't make enough of it. Dogs can make some. Humans make it. Premature. The only thing looking at humans in taurine deficiency are preterm babies in the intensive care unit. It's important for them for brain development to get taurine. But after a baby is weaned, that taurine deficiency is not only not an issue, but may actually, to excessive taurine, might actually start to be dangerous. And there was actually another study on a different note that with energy drinks that have taurine added to them, there can be cardiovascular side effects. So that certainly was dismissed. They talked about the vitamin D being added to plant milks, and it's synthetic and might not be well absorbed. The reality of it is most dairy cows are raised in the factory setting, never see the light of day, and the majority of dairy cows actually get synthetic vitamin D. So you can get your synthetic vitamin D added to your cow that gives the milk, and then probably some more synthetic vitamin D added, or you can get your synthetic vitamin D from plant milk that's been added. But the sources it's really not, it's a moot point. As well as the absorption. We know that phytates are actually protective against cancer. Most of the phytates and lignans, when they're heated, it becomes a moot point as well. The calcium, as we all know, starts to come from vegetables and beans and grains, so oats and other sources. So it really is not an issue. And if you look at it the other way, with cow's milk allergies, and the other thing that's really been associated with cow's milk is the side effects of casomorphins in dairy milk, cow milk, has been shown to cause apneic episodes, the allergies associated with casein and the casomorphins, delayed gastric emptying. So a whole host of things with cow's milk. So the ideal is for breastfed. So breastfeed as long as possible, and then obviously very safe to go to a plant-based milk. Again, you're not going to feed a child just plant-based milk. The diet should be rich in fruits and vegetables and whole grains like that of a human. So yes, again, vegans get a bad rap. We're going to give our kids plant milk and carrot sticks and lettuce, and they're going to be really skinny and get rickets and scurvy. And that's just not the case. Yes, there are extremes in that instance. There are extremes where kids are given Coca-Cola and fast food from the day they get weaned. So, how are those different? There are people that just don't understand on both sides of the fence, but we as plant-based people and vegans need to set the example and show just how healthy our children can be eating a whole food plant-based diet when you do it the right way. So I'm sure I'm gonna see tomorrow people eating chips and Tostitos, and of course there's a variety of vegan chips, Brussels sprout chips, beet chips, vegetable sticks, and all of these things contain acrylamides. And acrylamides comes from high heat to vegetables. So, the government has declared that 0.5 parts per billion, or 12 micrograms in an 8-ounce glass of water, is toxic, or the upper limits of normal. However, 6 ounces of French fries have 60 micrograms. Frito-Lay lost a lawsuit and had to decrease their acrylamide part per million to 275 to avoid having to put a cancer warning label on their products. Americans consume Americans consume 1.85 billion pounds of potato chips a year. That's 6.6 pounds per person. Actually, more than that because I don't eat them. And again, they can have 500 to 900 times the legal limits. Cod chips, which is a very, expensive potato chip, 910 times the legal limits. Kettle chips, 500 times. And baked chips are actually worse than fried because they're exposed to those temperatures longer. So chips in and of themselves, even if you're not fat, even if you're not overweight, even if you don't have hypertension, hyperlipidemia yet, are associated with increased risk of increased acrylamides, and then add that to every other vegetable at high temperature, and you can get into some big, serious cancer risk at any age. So again, whole food, plant-based, best way to go. Eat your potatoes baked. Eat your potatoes at a decent level, 375, boiled, microwaved. Much safer. If you're going to do French fries, bake them. And bake them in an oven, but bake them longer at a lower temperature. And don't use oil. It's COVID everywhere. And again, my claim to fame as a cardiologist is, hey, people are dying of heart disease. Let's look out. Same risk factors. We should get this under control, obesity being one of the biggest ones. And one of the reasons why obesity increases inflammatory markers so much is the adipose tissue is just not sitting there being insulation. It actually is metabolically active, secreting inflammatory type compounds, which are the ones that you hear associated with a hyperinflammatory response to things like COVID. So people that are overweight have a higher risk of having bad outcomes to SARS-CoV-2, as well as developing hypertension, diabetes, and so forth. Again, the mechanism of diabetes is not too much sugar in, but not being able to take the glucose up, say from an apple, because our muscle and liver cells are blocked by fat. The other thing is that fatty liver actually is causing more need for liver transplant than alcoholic cirrhosis. Once fatty liver progresses to scarring and cirrhosis, then the only viable option is a transplant. So these are serious things that we are ignoring in everyday life while we run from infectious disease or we're eating our fast foods from a car. Which leads me to a rebuttal on, again, me complaining that we should be talking more about cardiovascular disease and risk factors. And I quote, "If putting on a mask could stop heart disease, I would be happy to do it." I took that as, if it was easy, I could do it. But if it's, involves some effort, then I'm really not in for it. Sticking on a mask, I can say, hey, I'm helping my fellow friend by not spreading disease. And maybe I'm protecting myself. And it takes very little effort to do it. It may actually result in very little benefit. It may result in more benefit. I don't know. I don't think that anybody really knows, but certainly it's easy, right? It's easy to stick on a mask, and, it might actually improve your CO2 tolerance, so it could help a little bit and deliver a little bit more oxygen to your tissues. So as long as you're keeping it clean, can't hurt, might help, certainly easy. as opposed to actually changing your diet and becoming plant-based. So again, lead by example. If you want to help your fellow man, eat healthy, plant-based, whole foods. Show them how healthy you can be. Show them how it's done. Cook for somebody. I loved when I had Nanette on the podcast way back when, and she said, I just bring people over and feed them a good meal. And it convinced them, this is okay. I can do this. And, there's a nice restaurant, Seed to Table. Hey, Chris, if you listen to the podcast, when people go there and they eat his food, nice, healthy, plant-based food, they like it and they want to do it and they inquire and he has a conversation with them. It's not that hard. It can be simple, but lead by example. One thing you might suggest a mask could be used for, though, if you can't stay out of the chips and you can't stay away from the fried foods and the meat and the dairy, then, maybe that's a good time to put your mask on, because that could actually reverse heart disease. So maybe my rebuttal should have been to that person that if you put your mask on when you come with animal-based products and unhealthy vegan food, then yes, you could actually decrease the incidence of heart disease rather simply, I might add. So let's build our plate with wonderful colors, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, potatoes, sweet potatoes, purple potatoes, orange potatoes, yellow potatoes, all kinds of vegetables. I think there are about 40,000 plus. Make it colorful, abundant. Don't add salt, oil, and sugar to a bunch of things, and life will be good. Same thing for exercise. Move your body. Do what you like. Do a sport that you like, or just move in your day-to-day activity a little bit more of what you do. If you just cook at home the majority of time, you can increase your caloric expenditure, increase your nutrient density, and actually reverse your risk factors such as hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, hypertension. Because if you walk into the grocery store, carry your groceries out, bring them home, carrying them in, prepare your food, clean up your dishes, and eat a healthy meal that you have control over, you're going to burn a lot more calories and eat a lot better than driving to a restaurant or driving through a drive-thru, getting high-fat, salt, and sugar food, eating more calories than you should, expending no energy. That shift is huge over time. So just cook those colorful vegetables or eat them raw. If you don't want to cook, you don't like to cook, keep it simple. Eat them raw. Eat them uncooked. You don't have to call it raw. We are doing a giveaway for the ingredients to make our Irish stew. That's cabbage, carrots, potatoes, celery, as well as our poblano potato and our broccoli soup. So I'm really anxious to share that with the people at the Vegefest and give them those bags. They have to be there to participate, obviously, because it's fresh fruit, fresh food, or all organic. The recipe will be in there. It's quite simple. The ingredient list is in there, and they'll get a little bag that says Jami J. Dulaney, our heart beats plant strong. So thanks for taking a little practice run with this talk. I enjoyed it. I hope that I will spur people to be healthy vegans, to be positive. I think that being vegan is a great thing for the animals and for the planet, but we can do better. We can be plant-based vegans. And in case you wondered what the beep was in the background, that was my pinto beans and Great Northern beans that I'm going to make cowboy caviar out of after we're finished here. I'm going to make that for tomorrow for the Vegefest to take, just in case I can't find any food or can get away from the booth. A lot of times I get trapped just as I get to talking. Tonight I'm going to have Brussels sprouts, purple sweet potatoes, and some cabbage, so it'll keep it simple. Have some fruit after dinner. Got my 10-mile run in this morning. Life is good. I hope I can see people at the Vegefest. If I don't, maybe I'll see you on a run. Maybe I'll see you at Treasure Coast next weekend. But ta-ta for now.